Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? Oh my God, there's just been so much going on in media right now. And I just want to talk about it with you all. This just been a lot going on, okay? I want to say, send out my respect, send out my love, send out healing energy to Cassie. This whole Diddy trial has been absolutely just crazy, okay? I want to go over a few things that I've heard from the trial. I'm just going to speak about it just regularly. I'm not going to read anything. I'm just going to let you all know what I got from the situation and what I've heard, what I've been hearing. Okay. It's just been insane. So, Diddy and Cassie were together for about 10 years. They've been together for about 10 years before they called it quits, right? She got with this man when she was 22 years old, and she loved him. She really did. A lot of the things that she went through, was because of Stockholm syndrome, one, and another would be because she just loved him and she wanted to be seen. She wanted to bring him pleasure. The reason why she just went ahead with all of these things that was just out there is because she didn't want him to feel judged. He opened up a piece of himself, at least that's what she thought, to her, like, hey, I like voyeurism, watching people, be active, or watching my spouse and someone be active. I've revealed that to you. And she wanted to let him know that it was a safe space and that you can express those type of desires. You can express anything to me. I love you. And she just continuously said, hey, I loved him. I loved him. I wanted to be with him. And I wanted, us to be together. She just was in love with him. So she dealt with a lot of different things. Okay. Now, she said the first time he kissed her, she told her friend, it wasn't something that was welcoming. They had a situation where she was his artist. It was supposed to be, I believe, about 9 to 10 albums that she was supposed to do with Diddy, that she signed a contract for, but they never worked on these albums. Majority of their relationship was her just doing these things that they would call freak offs, and a freak off would just be some activity, some sexual activities that she would do with this individual, being Diddy, and that was their relationship. It turned out being a full-time job. Intentionally, she did never went into the situation saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. She didn't think that that would be like her life, but it ended up being her life. She was under narcotics, some drugs, y'all. She said that she had seizures, blackouts. She did so much of it, that she didn't remember a lot of what happened. She remembered a few guys, the ones that were consistently being brought up. She remembered them, but she didn't really remember much. She said her job was to find the men, and they went to different places. I'm talking about LA. I'm talking about Los Angeles is LA. I'm talking about just different places, New York, Miami, different places, as she would fly these men out with the purpose of them being active. Some men, that she was involved with prior to, so she knew them very well. And Diddy, liked them. He pleased them. He was pleased by them, and they would come, she would fly them out, and that was her job, to find the men. She would be on back pages, Craigslist. She would really do her due diligence and find these males, and they would be active with them. The first time they ever did anything, she said that she told the guy that, hey, I'm supposed to be getting married. So he came in to the room with the idea that, hey, this is going to be a bachelor's party. You know how they dress like a police officer, and that's what it's going to be. But when he came there, he was given a stack of money and told that, hey, my husband likes to watch, us be active. And he got intimate with Cassie, and Diddy watched for the first time. That was their first time, but it continued within their relationship over and over again. She speaks about a situation where she was an act almost like a commode. It would be Diddy and another person that was paid, a male, and they would urinate on her, and it would be all over her body. And she said that the first time that it was supposed to happen, the guy did it wrong and was instructed on how to do it. They're like, hey, you have to do it almost as though, like, just lightly put it on her, like you're sprinkle it on her. You're not supposed to just pour it on, sprinkle it on. The guys were like told that that's what they were supposed to do. And she was, very much so on influences. So she was under the influence of some substance, and she was just laying there, so out of her mind, that just lay there, and these guys would use her as a commode and all over her. Um, Something else I've learned in this situation is that these parties happened while she was on her menstrual. She was on her menstrual, and was still active during this time, and they were still intimate during this time. And she would have the freak offs almost like every day. She speaks about UTIs. She said that medication stopped working for her UTIs because they were so often the freak offs was happening. She said that she has sores all throughout her mouth, from putting things in her mouth, from putting different things in her mouth. You guys know what I'm saying? Wink, wink, right? So different things of that nature. She said she wasn't really fond of the oral idea, but Diddy liked it, so she got into it. She said that the first time they ever did anything, he introduced her to oral, and so that was the thing. She said she never wanted to kiss these men in their mouths, but was instructed that that's what Diddy liked. So she kissed these men in their mouths, but she was often recovering and sick. She said one time, she was just hit so bad that he saw her. She couldn't be put in any hotel or anything because they were afraid of the people at the hotel seeing her. So she sometime went to Diddy's house, went to D-Rock and his family's house, But she said that one time Diddy saw her and was like, no, you can't just be out here walking around. My children are out here. People are out here. They're going to see you, So he tried to hide it as much as he could from his children, but it was happening. Every time she would say no. She said that there was one time that she had texted him, and he was like, let me guess, you don't want to participate in any of the freak offs. You're so predictable. But she said that she had played it off like, no, I just was calling about something else. Like I wasn't calling about that. But he was well aware that she did not want to do it. But that's what occurred. They asked her where they were getting the meds or from, and she was like, the narcotics, it came from doctors. Diddy had connections with different people that they would go and get it. And then she said that the people that worked for him, sometimes they would put it in their names. It would be this person's name, that person's name. It was all like well balanced and spread around to where different people could get them the things that they needed. They needed it in order for them to operate within the freak offs. She speaks about the Stockholm syndrome of continuously going back. When she started dating her now husband, she went on a date with him thinking that it was closure, thinking that this was the end of it. But, that night when he came back to her place, he ended up, just doing things that she wasn't given permission of. You guys know what I mean, right? It was active. And she felt bad about that. She said that, she could not just cut him off. They had been together for so long that it was very hard for her to walk away from him. And although he had did the things that he did to her, she just could not see herself leaving him completely alone, and she speaks about just emotionally crying. My heart in this entire situation broke for Cassie because this could not be easy. You're in a courtroom of these different people telling them what all had occurred. Oh, he did this to me, he did that to me, and people are just here watching. Now in this courtroom, her husband's there, his children are there, everybody's there. There were times where her husband had to leave because they didn't want him to hear certain things. They said that he had threatened Diddy in the past, so because of that, and I don't know, they said potentially they might be thinking of putting him on the stand. They don't know yet, so that he had to be removed from the courtroom sometimes when she was telling her story. But Cassie has a very tragic story. I remember there was a Vlad. Was it a Vlad? No, it was the other guy, the one that Vlad has issues with. When they interviewed Diddy's, it was Diddy's, his bodyguard, and he was like saying how Diddy had told him that he was going to get the Danity Kane girls so bad on narcotics or drugs. Yep. It said that he was going to get them so on that he would mess them up, so he could take advantage of them. Made references to doing that. At least that's what the person said, in the statements, that, hey, that's what Diddy said, he would do that. So I believe it. Honestly, I never ever felt comfortable giving my opinion about Diddy, just because I felt like he was a legend. Just in my opinion, back in the day, his music was legendary. The Tupac, the Biggie, the all of it. I just don't have an opinion because I feel like I wasn't around during those times. I was a kid during those times, so I didn't feel comfortable giving my opinion. But Cassie's story gave me the confidence, the comfort that I needed to speak up for her. She is indeed a victim. I don't know what they're going to do in court. I don't know how they're going to question her. I don't know what they're going to say towards her or say to her, because she's been through enough as it is. I just feel so bad that just hearing this, I feel like this is not, something that I believe that she would be dishonest about, in my humble opinion. And wouldn't even want to question her honesty on it. They said that in this situation that like Cassie kept on saying that she loved him. I just loved him. She said that she was going to write a book, and she sent over a part of that to his people, and his people kept on saying, well, nobody's going to believe you. Nobody's going to believe that this happened. Nobody's going to hear you out. No, like your voice is not important. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to believe you. Nothing at all. And so she truly felt like, hey, I'm not important, and nobody's going to believe me. Like, nobody's going to care about the things that I'm saying. Nobody believes me. And it was just absolutely crazy. But that's how she felt, because that's what he said. So they brought up the money. They said, hey, why are you even speaking out? You were paid this amount of money. And we now know that it was like $20 million that she was paid. Why are you speaking up? And Cassie said she wanted to speak up about it. She felt like she went through all of this. I think that she wanted to help another victim, if that is the case. If somebody else is victimized by Diddy, she wants to add her voice to the pack. She wanted to be brave and speak up. For so long, them saying that, hey, I'm not going to say anything, and I'm not, nobody's going to believe you if you were to say anything. I feel like she wanted to speak up and say something and let her voice be heard and speak up for victims everywhere and do a very brave thing. Hearing her story really changes things, and it really, adds another level, really adds another level of just hearing, hearing the truth, hearing what people feel, hearing, just hearing it. It broke my heart for her. I don't think the money was enough, in my humble opinion. I don't think the money was enough. I feel like Cassie went through so much that I don't know if any amount of money is worth your sanity, is worth your mental health, is worth your peace. She gave up a lot of herself. And me, I'm religious, so I'm going to come from the religious standpoint and saying that I really believe that, all of this, she was able to endure all of this for a greater purpose. These different sidekicks and people been coming out and saying different things. Oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and all of that. But I feel like she was meant to go through this to save a life. I really do. Because this level of pain, constant pain like this, you have had to went through it for a purpose, have had to went through it for, a greater cause or a greater reason. I feel like she went through all of this to save a life. I don't know, to save somebody's life, maybe help Kim Porter in her passing. And so there's no other women like Kim Porter, nobody else to go through all of this. Maybe, who knows, child? Who knows what the purpose is of going through all of this? But all I know is that she really made me emotional, and she really made me feel bad. And me as a person, a mother that has a little girl, I want to protect my daughter. I want to protect my child. I want her to feel safe. I don't ever want her to feel like this or ever be exposed to something this graphic or this crazy. This Cassie's somebody's child. That's somebody's daughter that went through this hard time, This man, she said she just felt like an object that was just used by men, And it'd be an everyday thing, every day. So the 1,000 bottles of baby oil makes sense. If this stuff was happening every day, yeah, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil definitely makes sense. I don't know, this is just crazy stuff. I'm gonna play some clips at the end so you guys could see or hear other people just give them further information about it. But I love you guys. I'm just hearing the Cassie story and it breaks my heart, just breaks my heart. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I love you guys to pieces, and bye bye.
I was in the courtroom as Cassie was testifying, so let me tell you guys everything that you didn't see or may have not heard, because it's a lot. I will say the most damning part of her testimony for me is when she describes a freak off where Diddy and another man, an escort, are standing on top of her while she is laying on the floor high off of ecstasy, and they are urinating on her face to the point where she is choking on their pee. And to further give context, on the right-hand side of the court seated is her husband, Alex Fine. On the left-hand side, Diddy's 6 out of 7 kids are sitting in the courtroom as Cassie is describing having weekly freak-offs for years that would last 2, 3, one lasted up to 4 days. She talked about damaging hotel rooms so bad in one instance that they had to pay such a hefty fee because the hotel told them that they needed to completely redecorate the room after a freak off. After a freak off, there would be blood, urine, and lots of baby oil. There was so much baby oil. There was also so much baby oil talk to the point where the judge at one point told prosecutors, wrap it up. But before we even got there, a very pregnant Cassie was called to the stand. She was wearing a tight brown turtleneck dress that was hugging her baby bump. When she sat down, you could tell she was nervous. And if you couldn't, you quickly picked up on it because once she started talking, you noticed that she paused a lot. She would sigh heavily before she answered a question. One of those moments was when she explained to the court that a year into their relationship, that Diddy had approached her with this fantasy that he had. He called it voyeurism, where he wanted to see her have sex with another man, later referred to as freak-offs. She said her stomach dropped. She was 22 years old. She described herself as very naive and a people pleaser. She said the only reason that she agreed to it is because she knew it would make him happy and she was afraid what would happen if she said no. That's also around the time, she says, that he started to get abusive. Most of her testimony today was spent on talking about these freak-offs, the different escorts that they would use, the different hotels that they would use. She said that she would find escorts off of Craigslist and this escort service called Cowboys for Angels. And to describe them, they weren't the most attractive men, right? They were very average looking. Some of them weren't even conventionally attractive. One thing they had in common is most of them were black because Diddy preferred for her black men with a big D, she said. At one point, Cassie broke down in tears when the prosecutor asked her, why didn't you leave? If the freak-offs, as you explained, were so disgusting and humiliating, why not leave? And she started crying and said that she was very deeply in love and this was the only alone time that she could get with Diddy. And it got to a point where this was kind of the only emotional connection that she was getting from this man that she was dating. So much more that I'll cover in another video, including his incessant phone calls, him tracking her down with his security, and her never being able to escape him.
Tonight, Cassie Ventura describing a night in August 2018 when she went to dinner with Sean Diddy Combs after they'd broken up, seeking closure. She says when Combs brought her back to her apartment, he came in and raped me on the living room floor. I remember crying and saying no, adding it was fast. His eyes were black. He wasn't himself. Ventura breaking down on the stand as she described the emotional fallout of their tumultuous 11-year relationship, calling Combs abusive and controlling and describing a number of brutal physical assaults. The first, she says, was in 2007 or 2008 in a car. He hit me on the side of my head and I fell to the floor, she testified. I was shocked. I didn't understand why he was so angry. She said after another assault, she asked her mom to take photos of her injuries. And for the third day in a row, prosecutors showed the jury this video of Combs brutally beating Ventura at a hotel.
How important is all of this testimony on the domestic abuse?
The allegations of domestic abuse really help explain why she stayed. And so while maybe they don't have direct bearing, they kind of explain her state of mind.
She also testified that when Combs was angry with her, he threatened to release videos of their explicit encounters with escorts, which they called freak-offs. Ventura says she feared if the videos became public, it would ruin everything I worked for and make me look like a slut. Today, jurors were shown photos from freak-offs on their own individual screens, shielded from public view. Ventura said they had hundreds of freak-offs, which she says left her feeling emotionally empty and like I did a job, adding they led to infections and that she developed an addiction to opioids, which she used to numb her feelings. She says she ultimately went to rehab because she was spinning out and didn't want to be alive anymore. Combs' lawyers have called him a complicated man, acknowledging Combs has been violent in the past, but they say all sexual acts were consensual and he didn't engage in sex trafficking.